Right. Welcome to our board members and advisors. It's good to see you all, albeit remotely. And I'm delighted to welcome 3 new members to their first meeting. John Dugan from 3rd Sector Dumfries and Galloway, Carol Maguire of Police Scotland, and Jane Morrison-Ross from South of Scotland Enterprise. Could I remind members that we are being live streamed today and to allow for public access, and also that the meeting is being recorded and will be available for subsequent viewing online. Hopefully by this stage we are all familiar with online meetings and everything will run smoothly, and indeed that my IT connection behaves better than it did at our last meeting. Please keep your cameras and microphones off unless you're speaking, and could you type speak into the chat function if you wish to speak. I prefer, if possible, you don't use the raised your hand function, as it can be difficult to keep track of the order of requests to speak. It's my intention to have a 5-minute comfort break midway through the agenda, perhaps after item 6, but we can see how we do for time during the course of the meeting. It's my intention to, Kirsty will be assisting me to ensure that I get to everyone. She's going to keep an eye out for the speaks. But if all else fails, put on your camera and wave and Kirsty will pick you up. Before we move to the agenda, could I take this opportunity to extend our warm congratulations to our Scottish Government Location Director, Colin Cook, who last minute was named as one of the top 10 people in UK technology by Computer Weekly. The UK Tech 50 is the definitive list of the movers and shakers in the UK technology sector, and Colin achieved the number 8 slot, ahead of the CEO of BT, the UK manager of Amazon, and the executives in Twitter and Facebook. And indeed, I'm told Matt Hancock MP, who came in at number 39, but that maybe is something to be glossed over. So we're very proud and honoured to have you as our member of our team, Colin. Liz, could I ask you to give us a position about attendance?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We have a number of members who are still joining us, but we do have an apology from Councillor Rob Davidson, who's being substituted by Councillor Stephen Thompson, and an apology from Gavin Stevenson with a substitute, Derek Crichton. And at the moment, our other members are still joining us, but that's the only 2 apologies we have at the moment. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. If we move on to our first item, which is the draft minute of our Community Planning Partnership Board on the 13th of November, which is here for approval. And can I ask if members are happy that this is an accurate record? And I'll take silence and agreement, so if you don't agree with it, shout. Okay, I do see some, excuse me. I do see something saying that guests are waiting to join the meeting, but that might just be something that my iPad likes to tell me.
Don't worry, we'll make sure that guests are admitted, thanks.
Yeah. I mean, just in case any of them had a problem, if there were people still coming in. Okay, I'll take the draft minute as agreed, and if anybody has an issue, I'm sure that they'll let us know if they hadn't been able to get in time. Item 2 is the business briefing, and these are 3 items here for noting, and I'll ask if board members have any questions or comments, and Liz will deal with those. Anything on the business briefing?
No.
Nope. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Elaine. Section 2.3.3 in the business briefing, it's Helen Kerr of 3rd Sector Dumfries and Galloway. We were wondering, is D&G one of the local authorities involved in the creation of the report?
Yes, the local association COSLA has been doing work with all Scottish councils, as well, I think, as other agencies, and Dumfries and Galloway Council. In fact, I think where Councillor Davidson is today is COSLA leaders, and they're very much interested in the population report. So yes, we are taking an active part. I think
So there's also West of Scotland grouping looking at population decline, and I know that Rob Davidson is a member of that.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry,
so yes, just given that it's a particular interest of ours, yes, we will keep you involved.
it kind of jumped out because, I mean, obviously with our kind of the rural constituents or rural third sector organisations that we represent, there is concern there. You know, obviously it's an ongoing concern about depopulation, but it's a time for real opportunity now. Post-COVID, you know, the housing market's going pretty mad round us, and all of a sudden, you know, the space and the small schools and the things like that look like an opportunity, I think, for people. So it's just sort of seeking some reassurance. I'm quite sure it is being done, but some reassurance that this is being seen as an opportunity, not just an issue, not just a problem at the moment.
Very much so. Thank you, Helen.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. And Norma Hart wants to speak to you. Norma.
Thanks, Elaine. I just wanted to confirm, of course, John Dugan, as the Vice Chair of Third Sector in Dumfries and Galloway, is a member of the Community Planning Partnership Board. He's actually not here today, but I will pass on your welcome to him.
Thanks, Norma. So if there's nothing else on item 2, if we can proceed to item 3, which is the COVID Response, Recovery and Renewal Report. This is a helpful update as always, and while it's disappointing that the Partnership Recovery Group hasn't been able to meet to make the progress in the plan we agreed in September, it is of course understandable given the second lockdown. However, I'm sure that we will see progress by our June meeting. Hopefully people will find it easier to meet by then. Lee Seaton is here to answer any questions that members may have on the COVID pandemic. And as is the nature of an emergency, things change so quickly. Perhaps Lee could give us an update on any developments and changes over the last week since the report was published. Lee, is there anything that you want to add to your report?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, maybe just a couple of points for board members. In terms of our planning and recovery, yes, very much. We have got a commitment with Third Sector D&G and Norma, who has agreed to chair the recovery group, that is something that we are looking to begin after the Easter period, because our response, as you say, is beginning to ease in some areas, not all areas, I may add. One particular aspect I'd be keen to share is that we had contact with Visit Scotland recently, and discussions about the preparation for the anticipated high number of visitors that our region will welcome during the summer period and across Scottish borders and the south of Scotland approach. That's very much in keeping with the stay local message. We do know there were a number of challenges for our local communities last year. So in recognition of that, we have agreed to establish a multi-agency visitor management planning group involving Visit Scotland, Forestry and Land Scotland, Police, Fire, appropriate council services and the South of Scotland Destination Alliance. So we had our initial meeting this week, set out some broad areas that we're going to look at in terms of supportive measures to put in place enhanced infrastructure arrangements, communications ahead of the summer period, and also to try and make sure we understand where as a last resort our enforcement options are. The other two areas, perhaps, Chair, I'll just give a brief update on. I know there are other health colleagues on the call as well who may wish to jump in if necessary. In terms of community testing and vaccinations, which is touched on in the report, the most up-to-date position with regards community testing, we touched in the report that we were rolling out our community testing programme. I'm pleased to say that that programme is now operational. This is for asymptomatic, for people with no symptoms. We have that now in 4 communities across Dumfries and Galloway. Military personnel have been helping us staff that initially. We are very additional staffing and third sector volunteer resource to take that on as we move into the new phase. So within the first 2 weeks of the asymptomatic community testing, which you don't need an appointment for, remember, you can just turn up. We've had over 400 attending, capacity to take more than that, and we hope and expect to see that increasing. And the final point in terms of vaccinations, we've obviously referred to the joint work in vaccinations across the Council, NHS, Fire and Rescue Service and Third Sector again. Very pleasing rates for Dumfries and Galloway. We're comparing very well nationally. We're 51% of our Dumfries and Galloway adult population having had their first dose, whereas the Scottish average is 39.8%. And in terms of the adult population having their second dose, D&G is at 5% and the Scottish average just being under 3%. So reflecting very well in terms of progress locally, Chair, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Lee. Do we have any questions? And the reception wasn't fantastic all the time when Lee was speaking. So again, if people could keep their cameras off as much as possible. It looks as if we maybe have a few broadband connection issues. I've got
You've got
somebody,
Russell
a hand
Griggs,
flashed
Nick
up.
Morris.
Nick Morris was it? See, I saw a hand flash up quickly. Nick, can I bring you in?
Followed by Russell Griggs.
And Russell.
Thank you, Chair. Lee, I was just wondering about your visitor management program. Is there any way we can develop electronic-based material that could be sent out from the accommodation owners to people when they book into the accommodation? Usually it's caravan sites or bed and breakfast type accommodation or cottage style accommodation. Is there anything we're developing so that we can send some generic type material to potential visitors as they book and confirm their bookings into accommodation that describes some of the issues we're looking at here?
We have the South of Scotland Destination Alliance and Visit Scotland within the grouping. At the first meeting this week, we certainly spoke about the opportunities through digital support. For example, when we were discussing additional infrastructure opportunities, grey waste, municipal spaces, community spaces for additional parking, there were clear opportunities to use the interactive maps that are available within the website of those organisations to highlight where we've got that additional infrastructure. So based on the point that you're raising there, I'm happy to take that back to the colleagues at South of Scotland Destination and Visit Scotland to see if we could extend into the area that you're suggesting. As part of that preparation for the meeting, Visit Scotland did make contact with the self-catering and B&B sector within our region, and certainly could highlight, as things stand just now, they were at approximately 60% capacity and fully expect to be at 100% capacity come the summer period. So absolutely, that's an opportunity that I'm happy to go and explore with the group.
Thanks very much, Lee.
That's Russell.
It's okay. I'm Elaine. I've sent Lee my question, so I don't need to talk about it. I've sent it in the chat. Okay.
Okay, that's fine. Any further questions for Lee? Helen.
Oh, hi. Yeah, it was just it was section. Is it 2.5? I'll just bring it back up again about the effects of the lockdown supporting most vulnerable people. 30% increase in the number of children on the Child Protection Register, 18.6 increase in the number of domestic incidents since November 2020. Absolutely shocking and really hard evidence of the impact that the lockdown's having. Now, obviously, it's not, it's not anybody's fault, obviously, apart from the people doing the beating. But the question in my mind is, now that the evidence is accumulating for the damage that the full lockdown is doing, and it's clear, are we lobbying into the Scottish Government at an appropriate level to say that when the lockdown is relaxed, can we come into a tier that is appropriate for our level of risk? Because being conservative has worked really well for us so far, but now we're getting the evidential information coming in of the downside of being as tough as possible all the time. So it was just a sort of checking in that the evidence of the downside of lockdown is being incorporated at the highest levels, because those numbers really shocked me.
Yeah, so through you, Chair, certainly I know our Chief Social Work Officer has got regular dialogue with Scottish Government, and very much this is not an area of concern aligned to D&G only. It is a national issue. So that regular communication is happening. I know that. I appreciate that. I've got colleagues from NHS on the call as well, who I know in terms of the previous geographic level situation would have that regular input to help influence and drive our perspective of where we felt we sat in those levels. And that discussions, I would assume through Valerie, who's on the call, will happen again in advance of the introduction of the new level system.
Thank you.
I've got Stephen Thompson and Valerie White wanting to speak. Valerie is from Public Health and may be able to answer some of those questions. Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. It's just really to Lee on the back of the advice note that could go out to potential visitors to the region, which seems like seems at first glance to be sensible. I'm just sort of wondering, while there's a great benefit in using our local groups and organisations who know the industry, how it works in Dumfries and Galloway, a lot of the business will be linked to Association of Scottish Self-Catering or the British Holiday and Home Parks Association. So there'll be national or UK organisations which will already, I suppose, cascade information down to their clients, if you like, or their members. So is there a bit of a coordination where we're working top down and bottom up, so that we're not duplicating what, we don't want to conflict with other information? So can we work sort of with the, I was going to use a phrase to do with the organ grinder's monkey or monkey's or ear, but if we can sort of speak to both, we'll make it a better result overall.
Yeah, noted, Councillor Thompson, and as we have Visit Scotland represented on our group, that's very much the in that we would go through that organisation to support us in that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie.
Thanks, Chair. It was just really in response to Helen's question there about the other harms. At the Scottish Government, they do have they have groups that look at the 4 harms. So the one group that they look at is the harm by COVID, and then they do look at these wider harms as well. So Helen, some of that data would be being reviewed by those other groups, and as Lee said, I think it is an emerging picture, and the tricky thing now is to get that balance between all the harms. And I think what everybody desperately wants to avoid is going back into another lockdown situation. So it's just about, we need to get the vaccine rolled out. We need to see how that's affecting transmission, and the vaccine is rolling out at pace. So I would give you some assurance that at government level there's certainly that. And when I go into these meetings about the levels, I very much hold those other harms in my head as well. Although we are meant to specifically focus on the COVID harms in that the one that I'm on. But I think myself and other colleagues in public health are very aware of the impacts that this is having, which quite frankly have been devastating for many individuals. Thanks.
Thanks, Valerie.
Thanks, Valerie. I see Jeff Ace has put some information in the chat about the vaccination programme, which he says will accelerate significantly over the next 3 weeks, and that they're on track to vaccinate all over 50s and vulnerable adults by early April. I have to say, I think the NHS here in Dumfries and Galloway has done a tremendous job. They've been ahead of the rest of the country, I think, all along. And speaking as somebody who's had the vaccination, it was incredibly efficient. The whole process was extremely efficient. So congratulations to everybody who's involved in the vaccination programme, because I think it's been done extremely well here. Any further questions for Lee at all? Okay. I think this is for noting, just the recommendation 3, noting the updated position regarding the multi-agency response, the information about the convening of the recovery group, and just the relationships and the works of the local resilience partnership. Okay, thank you very much. If we can go on to agenda item 4, which is the proposed partnership on tackling poverty and inequalities. This report marks a significant milestone in our region's work on tackling poverty and inequalities. I'm sure we can all recognise and endorse the issues that emerged from the independent work set out in paragraph 2.6, and welcome the recommendations for the future approach that the Council's Communities Committee agreed last month. Mark Malloy is here to answer any questions on the report, but could I invite Councillor Andy Ferguson, who is the Council's Communities Committee Chair, to say a few words if he wishes to do so. Andy, do you?
Thanks very much, Chair. Just like to, I'm actually delighted when I'm in a position today to actually speak to colleagues on this report and our proposed partnership approach to tackling poverty and inequalities. The fully detailed content of the report with you provides a really considerable amount of information, and all the good work has been carried out over the last 12 months. This included a very detailed positive evaluation on the Council's first anti-poverty strategy and how we could use this strategy as the basis of a strong foundation for work over the next 5 years. Clear direction emerged during the numerous consultation events, and that the next evolution of this incredibly important piece of work needs to take a much wider partnership approach, as one public body cannot mitigate the worst effects of poverty on its own. We're particularly pleased with the development of the proposed new vision. Our vision is of Dumfries and Galloway, in which local action has driven poverty as low as possible and has mitigated as far as possible the impacts of poverty when experienced, end of quotes, together with the proposed new outcomes and enabling objectives. We feel that through this proposed new partnership approach, this will result in our new vision being realised, and that we can all together continue to make a significant impact and life-changing difference to the most vulnerable families and individuals within the region. The formation of the Tackling Poverty and Inequality is elected member and officer working group, which I chaired in my capacity as chair of Communities Committee, helped to guide and consult with each of the stages of the process and the recommendations for the new partnership approach proposed today. During our recent Communities Committee meeting held on the 9th of February, we agreed that the new partnership strategy would be proposed to be recommended to this board for consideration, and obviously we now have that before us. So I'm pleased to note that we have with us at our meeting, I've got Mark Malloy here as the Service Manager to provide any additional information about the detailed report. But before I do, I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank the partners involved in the Poverty Coordination Group for all their commitments to ensuring that this important element of their overall remit has been delivered to such a professional and cohesive level. We very much hope that all of the findings and the recommendations contained within the report for a new partnership strategy and the arrangements for the formation of the new Tackling Poverty and Inequalities Partnership meet with your approval, and we look forward to discuss this in detail with you all later now today. So thanks everyone, and Mark's here to answer any detailed questions.
Thanks, Andy. Okay, now hand over for questions to Mark. Anybody got questions for Mark here? We felt certainly that it was important that we brought this to the Community Planning Partnership because, as Andy said, it isn't just about what the council can do. It is something that needs a combined effort right across the community partners. So part of what we're asking today is actually for individual partners to confirm their involvement and representation on the partnership. Any questions for Mark? Or Mark, do you want to say anything or add anything to what Andy's already said?
No, Leader, I'm absolutely fine to just go on the basis of the report, and I think Councillor Ferguson's introduced it well along with yourself.
Right. Norma Hart.
I would like to speak.
Sorry, Norma?
Yes, just juggling windows and screens and everything. Mark, yes, I of course want to confirm Third Sector Dumfries Galloway's commitment to working with you on the strategy, and I know there's reference to our involvement in various points. I wondered if you could say just a bit more about the role that our own Tackling Poverty Forum would have, in particular around the delivery arrangements, the engagement structures which are mentioned towards the end of the report.
Through yourself, Chair, I think that the involvement of the third sector group, Norma, is critical to the success of this going ahead, and I think that if the partnership agrees this approach today, the next step in this is for what's currently the coordination group, but will become the partnership to meet in a few weeks' time to really develop how we're going to progress the action plans that will sit underneath this. And a key element of that will need to be our third sector involvement through that coordination partnership that you've got, and I've had quite positive discussions with Claire around that up to now, around how we make sure that that's got a critical role to play. And that's the language that I've used the whole way through it, is that, you know, this is not one public sector body that can do it. It's not public sector alone. It needs to involve all sectors, and I think that there will be a key role for that group going ahead. And I think there's an opportunity, once we get this a high level approach agreed, to look at a bit more detail of the connections between the partnership and that group as we go ahead and make sure it meets the aspirations of those who are involved in it.
That's great. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Norma. Okay, anybody else?
No further requests.
No further, yeah, doesn't seem to be anybody else. So I take it that we agree that there is a community planning tackling poverty and inequality strategy for 2021-25. The definition, vision, objective are set out in paragraph 210 to 212, and also agree the arrangements for the tackling poverty and inequalities partnership as detailed in paragraphs 37 to 311, and the individual partners will they'll then be invited to confirm their involvement and representation on the group. Okay, thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay, if we can go on to the item 5, which is the Regional Economic Developments Update. This report was referenced at the board meeting in September, as members recognise that we have a complex landscape of economic regeneration plans and bodies. An issue which has been raised in this forum on a number of occasions is whether or not there is a need to retain a Dumfries and Galloway strategy / economic leadership group, or if the arrival of an additional South of Scotland plan partnership and the cross-border programme partnership means that these are no longer needed. We have around this table today the key players for all the forums, so it will be particularly helpful, I think, for members to hear from Sheena Horner and Russell Griggs. Steve Rogers, Head of Economy and Development, is in attendance to answer any questions. But first of all, I'd invite Sheena and Russell maybe to contribute. Sheena.
Morning, everybody. Sorry, I'm having problems with my connectivity at the moment, as a lot of us seem to be having in the region. The Economic Leadership Group met at the beginning of this year, and we've held a number of workshops, and we've taken a number of approaches on board, and we have decided that we'd like to carry on, and we've had discussions with Lorna Meehan and the Council to be a critical friend to the Council, and have taken a number of objectives that we're going to take forward this year.
Thanks, Sheena. Could I invite Russell?
Thanks, Chair. I guess let me go wider than this. I guess we had a very good meeting which Sheena was at on Monday of the REP when we discussed the regional economic strategy. And I suppose we all came to the conclusion that we're really getting to a good point, is that whatever comes out of the regional economic strategy has to be all pervasive across everything that the three partners does. So it should be reflected in policies to do with housing, communities, etc. as we go forward. In terms of what I see as an internal matter, I suppose, Elaine, to the Council about whether this leadership group should stay in place, that's kind of your own call. So I'm not pushing one way or the other. And if Sheena is happy that what they're doing, and I don't mean duplicating in a negative sense, but it's not duplicating what we're doing within the REP and elsewhere, which Sheena sits on, then I'm okay with it for the moment. But I think the point I wanted to make today was more to say that we all agreed on Monday, all the two councils and us and everybody else that was on the REP, I think, Sheena, that whatever comes out of the rest is much wider than just the economy, and there'll be a lot of stuff in it about housing, communities, etc. So we need to see how that going forward is reflected in the other partners' policies as they go forward, Elaine.
Thanks, thanks both of you. I note that Sheena is saying that the group would like to continue, and certainly that they were, I know, doing a lot of work around zero carbon and so on, which fits in a lot with our climate emergency declaration. So there may well be, I think, a role for the Economic Leadership Group in terms of working with the council on some of our plans within Dumfries and Galloway. But I'll invite comments from other members of the partnership board.
Councillor Maitland would like to speak.
Jane.
Elaine, thank you. Good morning, everyone. This is a question, Elaine, that's arisen really from the background information that came forward. Paragraph 1.4, and it's a slightly oblique question, but Russell was basically saying this is actually really quite a wide encompassing remit. And it's about higher education. I mean, who is horizon scanning with respect to the risk that there is in any shape or form to our higher education provision here? COVID must have had a really quite chilling effect on international students. We probably don't know yet what's going to happen, but I must admit it would be very alarming if we went backwards in any shape or form. And I just want to make certain that everybody is thinking about this and saying that we mitigate any risk.
Chair, if I can comment, maybe reassure Jane.
I think you're the best person to do. Yeah.
Skills are at the heart of what we're doing, Jane. One of the key things we're doing, to the point that the rep now has a skills group, a skills coordination group, which I'm chairing at the moment, looking for it. But a key part of the res will be about education in its widest form. And that's why I said at the beginning, all of this, what we're doing, it's not just about businesses, it's about how we want to live and work in the south of Scotland, how we want to be educated in the south of Scotland. So be reassured that universities, HEFE, careers, the schools are all part of what we're thinking about. And I suppose one of the things that the skills group, which I chair, is looking at is how we, for the first time perhaps, get an across south of Scotland view on what we see we want to do in each of those areas. But Jane, be totally reassured that it's very much up there and the centre stage to what we're doing within the rep and the res.
Thanks, Elaine, very much. It was just such a struggle, if you remember rightly, 10, 12 years ago, to get it expanded on the Crichton, that it would be terrible if it was going to diminish in any shape or form. Thank you.
I agree. Helen.
Oh, hello. Yeah, it was a question. I mean, I think this is probably just me not knowing enough about it, but I was just wondering what timescale the res was over. I can't see it in the notes or the consultation. 10
years.
10 years, and looking to have it finalised by the end of May.
Yep.
I mean, you've made reference to the difficult timing, and obviously it's a balancing act of, do you stick or do you go? But by the end of May, we don't know whether we'll be able to legitimately drive to England. So the context of creating a 10-year strategy, how confident are you feeling that the consultation is going to be sort of meaningful and that people have got useful answers to give at this stage?
We've been very encouraged by the consultation. I think we've had over 600 already inputs to it of various degrees, either through the online survey or through the focus groups. So they've got a lot more going on. And what we're trying to do is define what could either be called our North Star or our beacon points in the future, that we all understand we've got to come out of COVID, but what we're trying to do is what do we want our community to look like in 10 years' time? If you're living here, Helen, in 10 years' time, how do you want to feel about your community? What's that? So we're trying to aim at those within the strategy, the much higher level ones. And Norma always keeps reminding us quite rightly that there's some in there that we have to get down to the nitty gritty of looking at the third sector, and everybody else is going to work in that. So there will be substantive bits, but we're trying to keep it now at a level that COVID aside, and I'm not saying we should ignore it at all, but COVID aside, as a community, how we want to be in 10 years' time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that'd be interesting. Yeah.
I'll bring Norma in.
Thanks, Elaine. I wanted to go back to the role of the Economic Leadership Group, and I'm really pleased to read and hear from Sheena that there's been a kind of clarification and confirmation of the role of the Economic Leadership Group, and particularly to be a critical friend to the Council. That seems to be a very sort of sensible and rational place to position itself. However, I'd like to flag up a concern that I have raised before, both directly with Sheena and at the Community Planning Partnership Board, and that is the absence of third sector representation on the Economic Leadership Group. I know there is one person from a social enterprise on it, but I have a number of concerns about a missed opportunity for the 200 plus social enterprises that we have in Dumfries and Galloway to participate and to benefit from the to participate in and benefit from the Economic Leadership Group. And so I want to make an offer, a direct offer to Sheena, that third sector Dumfries and Galloway works with the Economic Leadership Group to improve communications with the sector, to improve the representative role of third sector businesses on the Economic Leadership Group itself.
Thanks, Norm. I think that's really a matter for discussion between yourself and Sheena, and I'm sure Sheena will continue that conversation with you about how you can work together. Not necessarily an issue for the Community Planning Partnership as such, but more for the two organisations to try and work together. So well, I'm sure Sheena has listened.
I'd be happy to get in touch with Sheena to take that further. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, any questions for Steve, who is here to answer any questions, particularly on this report? I'm not seeing anybody. So we'll go to the recommendations, which is to note the contents of the paper, to encourage community planning partners to contribute to the development of the regional economic strategy. And we had a very interesting discussion at the meeting earlier in the week, and have been, as Russell was describing, at a significant number of engagement sessions with various sectors. So if people haven't already engaged with that, I would encourage them to do so. Note the progress on the development of the Borderlands Inclusive Growth Deal, which will be signed next week. Note the relationships and structures for economic development in Dumfries and Galloway and across the south of Scotland. To agree that a strong link is formed between the CPP and the Regional Economic Partnership, and to agree that the approach to membership from the private sector on the CPP is in light of this development. So as it happens, Sheena is on the CPP board as a member of the Economic Leadership Group, but she is also a member of the Regional Economic Partnership. So it may well indeed be the same individual, but wearing a slightly different hat in future. Are we content to note and agree all those recommendations? Thank you, and we seem to be making good progress. The next item, number 6, is the route map to carbon neutral. And this report was requested by our board last year, and I'm sure members have studied the detailed information with interest over the last week. There's certainly a wealth of statistical data available and a strong commitment from the Council to address the climate change emergency. So it would be helpful to hear from partners around about their work around climate change and how we can work together on this agenda. Simon Fieldhouse is here to answer any questions on the report, but can I invite any queries or indeed comments from members about either about the report or indeed about their own work around climate change? Okay. I think everybody must have been stunned by the level of detail in the report. Stephen, can I?
Professor Griggs would like.
Russell.
Thanks, Elaine. It's just to say I thought it was an excellent piece of work, and as you know, because the Council's been part of it, we've had our own energy transition group and working away with the two councils on board under Jeremy Sainsbury's chair, and we'll be launching, if that's all right, where we'll be releasing the summary of that document in the next couple of weeks with a number of key recommendations. and then a much more detailed part of it probably within a couple of months. So it's just to say, I think we're all moving in the same direction. Jeremy's group has identified a lot of quite practical things to do about the number of EV points, about the need to change our electric infrastructure, etc., etc. So I think we'll happily, and I'd be happy if the CPP wanted us, once we get to that point, to come and talk to you about what we are doing. But I'm sure you'll all get copies of the Energy Transition Group's report, which I say has been partnered with the two councils as well over the coming weeks, Chair.
Thanks, Russell. I think we all look forward to the results of that work and hearing. Certainly, I would be interested in hearing more about that piece of work once it's been progressed further. Okay, I'm not seeing any indications of wanting to ask any questions.
Maitland, please,
oh, Councillor. Okay, Councillor Maitland.
Elaine, thank you very much. Yes, I do see that there is an approach by the council. This is basically the council's kind of stab at it. But, you know, the initial question that you asked was, be interested to hear what everybody else is doing and how they're doing it. I don't know whether the NHS is approaching this on a Scotland-wide basis and the police equally, fire and rescue, everybody. But this is our community planning partnership. And I know that, you know, not just the eco warriors, but, you know, the average lady in Tesco, everybody's beginning to think about this in a serious way. And I just want to know that we know what's happening locally in order to try and achieve this incredibly ambitious proposal that we set ourselves for 2025. And it's not clear from this report what everybody else is doing and how they're doing it. And, you know, it's not for now. We can't address that right now. But I do think it's quite important that we maybe have a Dumfries and Galloway approach to this, even if it's to say this is what everybody's doing.
Yeah, thanks, Jane, for reinforcing that point. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to bring the reasons for the report being brought to do the community planning partnership was to involve other partners in tackling climate change. And that is actually was one of the intentions, I think, of the climate declaration was actually to work with other people. It's not something the council can just do on its own. It does need to involve everybody, whether it's the public sector, whether it's the private sector, and as I said earlier, the economic leadership group has been doing work around becoming carbon neutral. So can I just ask again if there's any contributions from health or yeah, Craig from the fire service.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, be more than happy to take this forward in a way that we can bring what the national organisation and therefore what is being put in place locally, bring that forward so you can see it in the context of Dumfries and Galloway. Completely agree with everything that's been said today. I think it is really important. It is our local communities, it is our local effort that's been measured here. Clearly, as an organisation, we are looking at that behavioural change, the fixed and mobile assets, of which we have a number across the region, procurement and reviewing our emissions. And there's an element, I think there is a bit of shared learning that can come from that if we were able to bring it all together. So more than happy to support the proposal so far.
Thanks for that. Suppose maybe
Councillor Ferguson to speak, Chair.
Yeah, Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks very much, Chair. I think with Craig and who's it went before him, I've kind of answered it. I think what I was going to ask, I think agreement today makes sure that we don't have a piecemeal solution in Dumfries and Galloway, because that would just be disastrous. So I think others have spoken enough about that. I'm just urging we absolutely have to have a concerted approach to this. It's everybody's problem, not just one or two. And we certainly need to all talk off the same hymn sheet, if I can use that analogy.
Thanks, Andy. I know maybe stop putting people on the spot at the moment if you weren't expecting to come in with a description of what you're doing to try and tackle climate change, but it would be good to have this on the agenda fairly regularly so that we can keep track of what we're all doing and make sure that we're going through, as absolutely as Andy says, as a, you know, in step with each other in terms of what we're doing. Nick.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that we've made a couple of comments in the chat about the NHS's commitments to carbon neutral. There's significant standards applied to us by the government. And you'll note, obviously, with the development of the COVID, there's significant opportunities emerging about distance working, working from home, etc., which may change some of our building footprints going forward as well. And obviously that affects heating, travelling, all sorts of things. So I think the key thing is to support the idea we bring our plans together with those of the partners so that it all seems to be integrated.
Thanks, Nick. Carol Maguire.
Morning, everyone. Yes, it's just similar to Craig and Nick. Certainly, from the Police Scotland point of view, this has been looked at on a national level. But certainly for future meetings, I absolutely will bring that forward for the local aspect to make sure that we're tied in.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
Councillor Ferguson looking to come back in, Chair.
Oh, Councillor Ferguson. Andy.
Thanks very much, Elaine. I'm sorry I should have brought this up earlier, but I'm actually wondering if you, with your indulgence, if we go back to the anti-poverty stuff, can we actually have the same kind of regular reporting from the different organisations, how they're tackling anti-poverty measures at the same time? I know it's out of context here now, but this has just made me think we should maybe be doing that until we can get a really concerted effort. So I'm sorry to mix the two things up, but I just think it's important that we see what everyone's doing.
Yes, I think, I mean, obviously the anti-poverty one is that we're going to put together a partnership group, but I think that, yeah, we would intend to see regular reports back as to, you know, what is being done by the partnership group. So I think, yes, very much that we need to keep that on the agenda as well. That it's great to have reports on things, but it's the actions that follow the reports that really matter. So yes, we must keep track of what's happening on that issue as well as on the climate emergency issue. Anything?
Thompson, Chair.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, just to echo what's been said, Chair. I think the words emergency and urgent can get worn out. I mean, it was April 19, I think, when Scotland declared a climate emergency, and it was June that year in the Dumfries and Galloway Council, I think, around about then. So that's a year and a half or so, you know, at least. So I mean, getting on 2 years. So we shouldn't really be talking about this is what we ought to be thinking about doing. It should be like, here's what we're actually doing just now, you know. So I think you know, it'd be good to see as much as people are able to bring those actions and works in progress back for the wider partnership to understand and coordinate.
Thanks, Stephen. Okay, I don't see any other contributions or contributors. So are we happy to agree the recommendations, which is supporting the climate emergency declaration, which, as Stephen's just pointed out, was actually adopted by the council, I think in June 2019. So it's been around a while, and it's not that no work's been done. A fair amount of work has been done since then with the climate change officer member working group and so on. So there has been a fair amount of work done since then, but we all need to take it forward. We welcome the development of the citizens panel when eventually we can get people able to get involved in that. That unfortunately was held up, obviously, because of COVID. Some of that development was held up, and encourage ourselves to engage with net zero ambitions and note the partnership approach taken to COP26. Okay, happy with that? As it's only 10 to 11 now, I don't think we need a 5-minute break yet.
Chair, apologies, Councillor Maitland to speak on the last recommendation.
Sorry. Okay, Jane, you want to speak on the last recommendation?
Yes, Elaine, it seems to me that we're noting as opposed to expecting something to come back. Everybody's making like noise. Just before. we are expecting something next week.
I'm sorry, I'm not catching what you're saying. I don't know about others, but I'm not, unfortunately, not catching what you're saying there.
It was about taking a view about how we were going to take this forward as a partnership. So could we have a report for the next community planning partnership? And I'm not quite clear about who is going to do this, but it seems to me important.
Okay, can I put that to Simon? Simon, did you catch that?
Thank you, Chair. No, I didn't catch all of that. I caught some of that in relation to bringing back potentially another report to the next Community Planning Partnership Board in relation to how we might be in a position to work together better and how we could streamline that. But I didn't catch all of Jane's proposal there.
I think from what I caught, I think it was particularly around the approach to COP26. So would you be able to say a little more about COP26 and how we might be able to work together?
Yes, certainly, Chair. So we're aware, obviously, that COP26, there's obviously sort of the opportunity for a very sort of quick verbal update on that. There was a expression of interest form supplied by the Cabinet Office that had to be returned last Friday. So what we've done locally is we put 2 expressions of interest as a sort of a Team South of Scotland approach. We work very closely with colleagues from SOS and also from Scottish Borders to submit an application expression of interest for the Blue Zone at COP26, which is being run by the UN, and also the Green Zone, which is being run by the UK government, to look at 2 complementary expressions of interest that obviously develop and build on our region's aspirations for carbon neutrality by 2025, and also the role that the region's natural resources and natural capital will play to support that. So those have gone in as a very brief expression of interest, and we're due to hear back by the end of May, start of June. And obviously, if we're successful, we can obviously look at how we can obviously cultivate that relationship to bring more partners in. We have got a decent spread of partners that have signed up to that from the private, third sector and public agencies. So we're wanting to try and build on that as we can moving forward. But it's obviously sort of all driven by the deadlines, but as I say, that's been submitted, and we should hopefully be in a position to obviously hear whether we've been successful as of the end of May, start of June, Chair.
Thank you. Jane, does that answer your question? It sounds that we would get, presumably if we are successful, we would bring that back to a future Community Planning Partnership Board meeting to discuss.
Stuck a wee thing into chat, and yes, I think basically that is covering things.
Thank you. Okay, so we're happy to note the partnership approach and to look forward to hopefully hearing that we've been successful. Thanks. We go on to item 7, which is the UK exit from the European Union. As I said, that was actually due at half 11, but in fact we're only 8 minutes to 11 now, so maybe postpone the 5-minute break until a bit later. The report is a small report, but it's certainly a big issue. And since the report has been issued, there have been developments in relation to the Northern Ireland position, as members will no doubt have heard in the news. Can I ask Andy Reid to give us an update on anything further to the information in the report, and then he will be available to answer any questions. Andy.
Good morning. I think that's my microphone off. There's not a lot to add in relation to the report. I suppose the news of potentially the EU threatening legal action against the UK government in relation to the inspections which are required on the Northern Ireland side. They've been sort of moved back to October, with the other inspections with regards to EU items coming into the UK moved back till the 31st of March, I believe. Obviously, it's fairly fast paced at the moment with the changes. In relation to if they go ahead with the 1st of April physical inspections in Northern Ireland and impacts upon Dumfries and Galloway and businesses, there shouldn't be a huge amount of impact. I've just come off a call with Belfast ports. The GB inspections at this point and going forward will be fairly light touch. They've got enough stuff to inspect at the moment, and therefore it's going through, and it's not being picked up in their requirement of 1% check-in. And they don't envisage that to change. They also don't envisage that the April deadline will come, and that they're still working with the October sort of schedule. I hope that sort of just gives on that specific area. If there's any other areas you want to pick up, I'm happy to answer questions.
Thanks, Andy. Any questions on the report or comments?
Nothing in the chat, Chair.
Nothing in the chat, no. You seem to have got off lightly, Andy.
I thought there'd be questions about the hair, Elaine. Getting more and more.
As rude as the council. Thanks anyway. So we're happy to note the report on EU exit. Okay, item 8 is locality planning, community planning, locality hubs. This is a helpful update on the raft of locality initiatives that are around, and I'm sure it is of assurance to members that there is a coordination, appropriately light touch and dialogue taking place to ensure that there is no duplication and no gaps. Could I invite Norma Austin-Hart to say a few words about the report, and then invite members to comment or ask questions of Norma or of Liz Manson. Norma.
Thank you, Elaine. I wanted to just remind the board members that one of the central recommendations in the big report that we did last year with the third sector was to strengthen the role of the locality hubs that we set up in the immediate response to COVID-19, and they have been they've worked really, really well, and we are keen that their role is strengthened in each of the 4 localities. The only other comments I wanted to add to what's in the report is I can't miss the opportunity with Russell being on this call just to say how very keen we would be to have South of Scotland enterprise participation in the locality hubs, and I have flagged it up with a number of people in SOSE, and in fact I have a meeting this afternoon in connection with it. But any support that Russell can give to that would be most welcome. And the only other comment I wanted to make is to try and give board members a bit of an idea of what these locality hubs can do. I was thinking about the discussion earlier about opening up the town centres, and particularly for visitors as we come out of COVID. And I think that the role of the locality hubs would be fantastic in coordinating volunteers to act as town centre champions wherever it's appropriate, and to mobilise a team of volunteers that would work within local communities and local tourism facilities to encourage and support visitors in the area. So the locality hubs would be a really good mechanism for making that happen on the ground. So that's all I was planning to say, Elaine. I'm very happy to take questions. Thanks,
Norma. Yes, and thanks for highlighting the town centre restart plans, which I noted on the diagram in Appendix 1, but yeah, they could well play a very important role in helping to reopen and restart our local economies. Can I invite questions, comments for Norma or for Liz? I've got a comment in the chat that from Russell Griggs saying that the new CEO is listening and will take your request forward. So hopefully be practicing.
That's yes. Jane has replied.
Jane has actually said that too. Derek Crichton wants to speak. Derek.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks Liz and Norma. Very much welcome the work you're putting into this. Endorse the direction of travel. It's not lost on me, Norma, that it won't be that far short of 20 years ago when we probably brought a similar report on establishing 4 local rural partnerships in Dumfries and Galloway. So, I can recall vividly the notion around Wigton, Booktown, etc. So the point I'm simply making is that local placemaking, local communities are at the heart of making successful connections for both social and economic recovery and improvement, and therefore very much endorse the approach. And clearly now the landscape is quite different, and the emphasis on place and ward working is that new landscape, and very much just fully support what you're doing. And let's make sure we're challenging, because I think it is critical that we are dealing with unprecedented times, and will do in the future. So the more we are challenging each other and pushing boundaries, the better, because that's when we will make a better impact. And I look forward to those challenges coming forward. Thank you both.
Thanks, Derek.
Yeah, thank you, Derek.
Share a comment from.
There's a comment from Craig in the chat. Craig.
Thank you, Chair. It's really just to echo that the sentiment that's been put out there, and just to ensure that there is an awareness that the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service would really like to be part of the locality hubs. That clearly links to community, trusted partner, the eyes and ears, everything else that we can bring in, we can utilise those forums for a safer community overall.
Yeah, thanks for that, Craig.
Yes, thanks, Craig, and I'll be taking that up with Kirsty Peden, who we work with closely on the locality hubs development.
Jane's got a comment in the chat as well. Jane.
Yeah, I put it in the chat, Elaine, because I wasn't sure that anybody can actually hear what I'm trying to chitter on about. It's really about communities and knowing they're knowing what's going on. I think the concept is barely understood, Norma, actually, locally. I would go to my community councils and ask them about a local hub, and I don't think they would probably be able to reflect back to me what was going on. One or two of them might, but I don't think all of them. And you know, there are 13 in my ward, so I think I probably got a fair idea about what's happening there. And it's a great opportunity, but it's just maybe getting information out. Some of them will remember back to the local rural partnerships, I agree, but some of them will be completely new to the concept. So it's just how we get it out.
Thanks, Jane.
Oh, sorry, Elaine. Would you like
to
me
reassure Jane that we could hear it this time? Okay, Norma.
I think that's an interesting point, Jane. I think, in fairness, quite a few community councils are connected or are aware of the work of the locality hubs. So far, their work has been very much focused on the coordination of local volunteering and grassroots community organisations, and supporting them in their response to COVID. And I know that community councils have been engaged with them. Beyond that, as their role develops, and this is what we're trying to think now just a little bit further into the future about how the role could be developed, I'm sure there are lots of opportunities for reaching out more comprehensively to the community council network. And again, I'll be discussing that with Kirsty Peden when we meet next to discuss the role of the locality hubs and how they're evolving.
Thanks, Norma. Jane, is that anything? Did you want to come back on that?
Sorry, hammering into the the side. Yeah, Norma, I'm sure they get the volunteering and the COVID and everything that has arrived from that, which was fantastic. You know, the whole resilience and the volunteering. But I don't think they get the opportunities that are coming from Appendix 1, that diagram. I don't think that they quite realise that there's a wider feed-in process that is an opportunity.
As I said, I'll take it up with Kirsty and Liz. Perhaps we want to comment, but we'll definitely be looking at how we can improve communications with the community council network.
Thanks,
very much
Norma.
so.
See, Liz.
Perhaps, Chair, if I could just highlight that I think we all recognise that a number of these locality initiatives are at a very early stage, you know, and we're still just, I think, working through how best they fit together. We are very clear that they are complementary and that each organisation or each area has got perhaps certain requirements to meet, particularly the new plans relating to the Planning Act and, for example, the Borderlands Place plans. And I think what we're trying to do is manage the development of the locality hubs at a pace that allows them to make the best of the experience that they've got to date without loading them with too much too soon. So I think we'll certainly keep the board up to date and the community councils and other partners up to date with how things are developing. But I think we're at an early stage with some of this. We wanted to give you the assurance that the relevant people are talking to each other and to make sure that we're all understanding what's in the landscape. Thank you.
Thanks both. Any further questions? I'm not seeing anything on chat, but leave it a couple of seconds in case there is. Okay, so that was really up for discussion. I know Norma and Liz will discuss further the issue about communities becoming aware of what's going on, the community councils maybe being aware of the locality hubs. But thanks for that, Norma. We can go on to the next item, which is the current key strategic issues, which is the update on the plans and strategies that contribute to the local outcomes improvement plan. And we'll just do the usual process of going through them and now to members the opportunity to comment or ask questions. And the first one was the anti-poverty strategy, which to a certain extent we've already discussed, but is there anything further on the action plan from 2015 to 2020, which we can feed back to Mark and Wendy? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. So the next is the Children's Services Plan and Local Child Poverty Action Plan. Any comments or questions on that? Which again we will record and feed back to Jim Brown. Okay, not seeing anything there. Sorry, Kirsty.
Nothing in the chat, yeah.
Nothing in the chat, no. The Community Justice Outcome Improvement Plan. Comments or queries on that, which we can feed back to Vicky Binney. It's quite a loud paper typing noise coming through. Okay, I'm not seeing anything on that. Okay, the Community Learning and Development Partner Strategic Plan. Comments and queries, we'll go back to Steve and Jack on this. Nothing on that.
Yeah.
No, nothing on that. Local Development Plan. Comments and queries to go back to Shona McCoy. No, not seeing anything. Right, look, Helen.
Yeah, sorry, still slow on the old buttons. Just to say with the regional spatial strategy, it obviously echoes a lot of what we have been talking about here. So I'm quite sure that it is, but just that it ties in with everything, you know, the climate change, economy, people, place, connectivity. That's integral to almost everything we've been talking about here. So to make sure it's adding, not duplicating, I guess.
Thanks. I don't think there's anybody present that could actually answer that at the moment, but we can take that back to Shona.
Thank you.
Yes, obviously, yeah, we have to align everything. Okay. Next one's local housing strategy. Well, I'm assuming that your hand, the hand that's up, is from the previous question. Let me know if it's not.
Nothing in the chat here.
Right. Okay. The Regional Economic Strategy 2016 to 2020. And do we take any comments back to Juliette Cook?
Councillor Maitland.
Councillor Maitland.
It's not so much a comment, it's a bit of a question. Not everything can go well, and I saw that in 7.2, our carbon negative economy, and the partnership bid was not successful. Is there anything that we should do to mitigate that? I don't absolutely know what that was all about, but I'm sorry it didn't work, but maybe, you know, we can do something different in the future.
Is there anyone able to, Liz?
Yeah, I'm just going to say, Chair, perhaps in the update that we're getting to the next meeting, we could perhaps explore why the feedback that we had on that bid, to see if there are any lessons learned for the future. But I'm sure colleagues will be happy to perhaps just do a briefing to members in the meantime, but we could perhaps explore a little more some of the lessons learned as part of the climate paper to the next meeting.
Thanks. Yes, that would be worthwhile, I think. So there was a recommendations in item 5 are agreed. This will be in future will be updates to on the South of Scotland Regional Economic Strategy, which I'm sure we would all welcome updates on the development of the strategy. Okay, the next one is the Regional Transport Strategy. We'll take any comments back to Douglas Kirkpatrick. And I'm not seeing anything on that either. Okay, everybody content? In which case, we'll go on to the annual reports from thematic partnerships. One of the roles that this board fulfills is the scrutiny of the thematic partnership bodies to ensure that they are operating effectively and efficiently. We agreed the programme of reports at our last meeting, so here are the first 4 reports for our consideration, and 2 of the chairs of the board are members of this board, so they may wish to say a few words of introduction to the reports. Liz will deal with any inquiries, and the first report is the Economic Leadership Group Annual Report, and could I invite Sheena to say a few words on this? Sheena.
Hello again. As I said before, that we had 3 workshops, and I can actually add on to that is that we've decided that the new role purpose of the group is to be a collective voice for the diversity of the businesses in Dumfries and Galloway, to advise, advocate and be a critical friend to the agencies at a strategic level, to influence ministers, senior civil servants and politicians for the benefit and prosperity of the region. And our key purposes are to champion, coordinate and constructively challenge the implementation of economic strategies to ensure that priorities for skills, business growth and regeneration are delivered in alignment with ambitions and policies.
Thanks, Sheena. Any questions either for Sheena or for Liz? Okay, thanks very much, Sheena. Second item is the Integration Joint Board Annual Report, and I'll invite Andy Ferguson to say a few words on that. Andy.
Thanks very much, Chair. Not a lot to say because we're actually just in the process of changing over from this next upcoming meeting will be my last as chair, and I'll be making way for the NHS representative. The work's currently underway. A lot has been held up because of COVID, because significant contributors are on frontline services, to be frank. So things are a wee bit delayed, and there's a paper coming to the next board asked us to continue with the current plan for a further year to allow hopefully COVID to subside. And I don't think there's much more than that unless anybody's got any questions for me.
Thanks, Andy. Can I invite any questions or comments? I'm not seeing anything in the chat.
Nothing in the chat, Chair.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Andy. The third report is the Local Employability and Skills Partnership Annual Report. And I think Lynn's here, actually, if there were any questions for her. Everybody content with that? No questions? Yeah, everybody's getting off fairly lightly this today, aren't they? Okay, not seeing anything. Yeah, I'm seeing something about. Unfortunately, yeah, that Jamie is here for the housing. We've actually gone through the housing report, I think. Unless, and I've also got, yeah. Mick Morris is thanking Andy for his contributions over the years to the IJB in his role as chair. But there's no questions on the Local Employability Report. Oh, no, sorry, the Strategic Housing Forum report. I was thinking of the previous report. Yeah, okay, the Strategic Housing Forum Annual Report, and Jamie Little is here from if we've got any questions on the Housing Forum Annual Report. Okay, everybody content with that? And our next item, and final item, I think, is the Community Planning Partnership Board Forward Programme. It's here just so that we are aware of our forward programme, and if there are other issues which you feel would be useful for a shared leadership approach or problem solving to assess the region. Well, obviously, we're keen to hear from partners if there are other things that we feel ought to be on our agenda and that we should be working together on. So any queries or comments, and particularly suggestions from partners about other items which should be in our future agendas? Jane is saying carbon, carbon, carbon.
Yes, Chair, thank you. We'll obviously add on the update on the climate emergency to the June meeting as you've agreed earlier today. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. Anything else that people feel should be on? Obviously, we're the Tackling Poverty Partnership Group. I think maybe we want to see how that's progressing also.
Chair, a request to speak from Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah. Councillor Ferguson. And then Nick Morris.
Thanks, Leader. Sorry, Chair. I'm not sure what to call you. Just call you Elaine, I think. You've just covered what I was going to say, and if I can maybe just add to say thank you for this board making a place available for the IJB, and this, as I say, will be my last one. So thank you from me, and Laura Douglas will be assuming the chair at the next IGB meeting. After the next IGB meeting, she'll be coming along from here onwards. So it's a thank you very much, and you've covered the question I was going to ask. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Nick is suggesting a focus on Project 155, which we had all agreed should be part of our programme of work, but we haven't really taken many reports on that. Nick, do you want to add to that at all?
Thank you, Chair. I was just looking at all the papers that we've considered today, and as complex as the environment is going forward.
Nick, you've become muted. You've muted somehow.
Sorry, apologies for that. Yeah, I was looking at all the papers for today, and I was looking at, regardless of the complexity of the agendas going forward, there seem to be some themes that tie things together. One is the economic development and generation of the area. And the second one is a population well-being sort of agenda that's emerging, particularly on the back of COVID. And of all those things coming together, the Project 155 seems to be quite significant in terms of adding to our ability to regenerate through the growth of our population, if we can achieve that. And also looking at how that population growth influences the diversity of our local areas, that in a way that impacts on our inequalities agendas. Because clearly income growth from people moving into the area will also affect things like housing and the distribution of wealth across the patch. So I just think that may be one of the themes that we need to focus on, that draws many of the other projects into some sort of strategic system.
Sorry, you seem to have frozen.
Apologies.
Or maybe I'm freezing.
I think I could see Liz nodding to many things, so I assume she's probably got the gist of what I said, so that's helpful.
Yeah, very much so, and we'll certainly arrange for Andy Reid, who's leading on the population work for the council, to make contact with other colleagues about how to take that particular project forward. I think once the Scottish report has been published, that will certainly give us a framework for local work as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Mal. My network went down there briefly, so I didn't catch. I lost sort of Nick froze, and I lost everything, so I'm quite sure what's happened since then. But I presume that we agree we will take reports from
Happy
Project
to pick that
155.
up, yes, Chair.
Yeah. Well, if there's nothing further to go on to the agenda for future meetings, can I just thank everyone for their attendance and contributions. Stay safe as usual, and hopefully we will meet again in June, and hopefully recovery and renewal will be well underway by then, and we might all be vaccinated. Maybe some of us will even be fully vaccinated by then. But thanks very much for your attendance.